Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Social Flight Live. I'm Jeff Simon. We have a fantastic show for you this evening. Chris Henry is here from EAA, and we are going to get a behind-the-scenes look at the EAA Museum. And so we will get stories and all the cool things that actually go beyond the norm and beyond the typical visit in all of that. And so before we get started, a couple quick notes as we usually do here. First of all, wanted to talk, we are still having our contest for Flying Eyes, giving away Flying Eyes eyewear. Send your stories about supporting general aviation and flying and getting out there to us here at info at SocialFlight.com. That's info at SocialFlight.com, and we should be drawing that within a couple of weeks. We also are getting ready on May 1st to give away, as part of our Fly to Win challenge, the Zulu 3 headset from Lightspeed that we have. And all you need to do that, to participate in that, is just get the free Social Flight mobile app for your phone and go flying. It allows you to check in at airports. You just do that anytime during the contest period. Even a single airport check-in, even your home airport, will count, and then you'll be all set to go, and you will be entered in that contest. Again, May 1st is what we're actually doing for that. And so with that, the other thing is I just want to let everyone know, of course, as usual, tonight's broadcast will be recorded and available on Social Flight's YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search on one word, Social Flight, and you get everything that goes along with that. So with that, I want to give a quick bit of background as to why we decided to do this episode here on the EAA Museum. And it comes from a little bit of a story. Years ago, I've written for many different magazines. I used to write for EA Sport Aviation for a while. And I remember taking my kids, Ben and Jake, out there as part of a cross-country trip. And we stopped to see the museum and see the offices there at EAA. It was off season, which is a very, very surreal way to visit Oshkosh Airport. It is, we're all used to going there for AirVenture, and seeing it when it's not AirVenture is an interesting thing. But this was the first opportunity we really had to go into the museum. And I have to tell you, it was just wonderful. It is, I have been to the National Air and Space Museums, plural, been to many, many aviation museums, but EAA's museum is what I would describe as one of the most personal experiences that you can have, with extremely unique connections and parts of their collection and stories and things. It really is a part of all of us, and anyone who actually goes to AirVenture and has a history and is a member, of course, of EAA. And so I'm really, really thrilled to be able to bring a piece of that to all of you during a time when travel is more difficult, but things are starting to open up now. And I would encourage you, if you have an opportunity, even if you're going there for AirVenture this year, take some time out and go visit the museum, because it is a very, very special place. And with that, I would like to bring on here Chris Henry. Chris is EAA Aviation's museum programs coordinator, and he's been with EAA for 10 years now. And Chris, I am just thrilled that you've taken the time to join us this evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. Looking
Uh,
forward to a fun night.
Excellent. Thank you. So, look, well, first of all, I have to comment. You have one of the coolest offices I have probably ever seen.
Yeah,
I mean, people do all sorts of backdrops and things like
yeah,
that.
here, let me give you there's the some of the other parts of it here.
Oh my
So,
God.
yeah,
You,
it
you, you definitely have owned that office for 10 years to have the walls covered in that.
coming up. We're getting close to 10. Yeah, and
Wow,
at
that's
eight and a half, about eight
fantastic.
and a half right now. So, yeah, my friends call this my museum inside the museum. So,
It
and a
is.
lot of, well, and what's interesting is a lot of it is from the programs coordinator position that I do. These are folks who I've been honored to host here. This was actually a different part of the museum down by the oral history programs and the studios and stuff. They had a wall like this, and I always thought that was really cool that they had a wall of all the people they've interviewed and stuff. So I started doing that with people I've hosted. And it's like a wall of heroes. They're just people that have always been heroes of mine, and then somehow I end up driving them to Denny's and stuff. I mean, it's incredible. It's an incredible place to
Like
work.
that. They're heroes of mine, but somehow I wind up driving them to Denny's. That's awesome.
It's exactly that. The one thing I will say, and I don't want to sound like a commercial for EAA, but I will say this, and this is truly from my heart. There's that saying out there that says, "Never meet your heroes," because they can't live up to what you think. And I always tell people, like, that is flat out wrong, at least with so many of our aviation and space heroes, because they're even cooler than you thought. And
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate to not have any bad experiences. These people are just incredible treasures. So it's a really cool place. It's a cool place to get to
You know
work.
what? I love that you said that, because I have found exactly the same thing, yourself included, because obviously you have so many
Thanks.
things to do with the museum and so much history with everything that's going on here. But I have absolutely found that of all the wonderful and amazing and inspiring and famous people that have been on the show, the time I've spent with them, both on and off the air, it is amazing how wonderful and just grounded and astounding these people are. Like everyone I've ever met, who are my heroes in aviation, are always, like you said, better than you could imagine. You're like,
One of
oh
one
my
of my
God,
favorite
there's no accident. You are where you are.
no, one of my favorite stories is I worked in medical helicopter field for a while, and one of the legends of helicopter rescue is Don Usher, who is a state police helicopter pilot. He's the guy who flew the helicopter in the Air Florida rescue out on the Potomac, where they're pulling people out of the icy water in
Oh yeah.
1981. And I got to host him here, and he was always like a legend in helicopter rescues. And I got to meet him, and like, we're friends. Like, we write and call, and I'm like, this was like a hero of mine. And now, like, we went to Applebee's together. I mean, so it's a really surreal place to work. It's kind of like getting drafted by your favorite football team, is what I tell everybody,
That's awesome.
which is
Well,
the
at some point in time,
Steelers.
we're actually going to have to get a tour around your office,
Yes,
as
absolutely.
being within a museum. But I want to start now, actually, with the museum itself. Now, this is a
Yeah.
picture of the museum. When everybody is driving in to the blue parking lot or getting redirected to the red parking lot or whatever you used to, this is what you see, right? This is where the blimp is parked.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
it.
how,
Yeah, and
how long has the museum been here?
So the museum moved here in 1980, is when it really sort of made the move. It really fully got going in, I believe, 83. I don't want to misspeak, but I believe that's when it really took off. That view, by the way, that you had up there with the water in front of it and everything. Brief bit about me was, I'm not from Wisconsin. I moved here to work here.
Hmm.
I had been a fan of EAA for many years prior. I was a lifetime member before I came to work here. So the day that I got hired, and my first day, I drove in through that view, and I still get geeked out driving to work every day. When I pull up and that's the view of my way into work. There's the C-47 sitting next to there. Like, there's a lot of times where I just kind of take it in for a second, and like, this is where I work. Like, you still get the chills, of like, this is too cool. This is a really neat place. If you would have showed 15 or 16-year-old Chris that this is going to be your place of work, he wouldn't have believed you. But I love the view. I mean, there's times I come out and do night photos of the museum all lit up still and everything.
It's such a nice place, and as I said, it has this personal feel to it as well. As I said, the first time I remember coming out there, and it was out there to showing my two little boys the magazine layout. Like, that's Daddy's article, like all laid out when it used to be, instead of computer, like posted on a wall. And the museum's just such a cool place, and the fact your offices are there, really just helps. So let's dive right in. This
Yeah,
there's a lot to chew on just in this one picture of just a couple planes in here. What
right.
what are we looking at?
So you're looking at, the closest one to the camera, November 42901 Charlie, that is the Lesher Teal. And the aircraft next to it is the Ebnetter. These are two experimental home-built aircraft that actually went out and chased a record, speed records for their type and for their class of aircraft. One of the things I think is really cool about it, and this I love this picture. This is why I love the sort of approach EAA takes. is everybody's welcome, and that's something that Paul used to say.
Hmm.
His quote was, "Who would we tell to stay home?" Like that really isn't what the spirit of aviation should be about. And just looking at that picture, you've got these two experimental home-built aircraft, which we're a museum that definitely focuses on that. I mean, that is our roots. That's the roots of EAA, is from experimental home building. But then in the background, you've got like the Spear of St. Louis, which of course, who hasn't been inspired by Charles Lindbergh's crossing? That aircraft there actually has history to it as well. And then you have the red and white biplane behind there. Was a group of kids built that. It was a group of high school students built that aircraft. And then of course the yellow airplane hanging up, that's the first Vans. So you literally have like the first RV, the Spirit of St. Louis, two speed record aircraft, all visible in just one shot. And I think that's really cool. And an airplane that's literally built by a younger group of people trying to get into the aviation world. That's truly what EA is about right there.
Wow. I mean, that is, it really is. And tell me a little bit more about the one that's in the foreground there, because that is one strange looking airplane to be, especially a record chaser, a pusher, and all the things that go along with
Yeah,
that.
exactly. When you start looking at this, I mean, this is sort of the essence of what home building is about. Look at the design of this airplane. Not a conventional airplane from what you would think of from that standpoint. When you look inside, it's very bare bones. And when I say bare bones, I mean there are no creature comforts inside this aircraft. And it was designed to meet a specific goal, just like the Ebnetter sitting next to it. This airplane was custom built to achieve a speed record. And
Mhm.
that's it. I mean, that's a lot of times why these airplanes end up in a museum, is they're not really, you don't want to go cruise that to a pancake breakfast. That's not what that
Yeah,
airplane was designed to do. But yeah, I mean and we're lucky to have, two of them sitting next to each other.
it's fascinating. So here's another view of a different part of the museum. Obviously,
Yeah.
the much more warbird oriented.
Sure, sure. And there's a reason why we have that. A lot of folks sort of wonder, why do we have a B-17, or why do we, just on Facebook this week, somebody asked, why do you have warbirds at the EAA? And there's a few different reasons for that. And I think the most important one is, we can't forget, without the sacrifice these men and women have have done over the years, we wouldn't have these freedoms we enjoy today. We wouldn't be able to go out and enjoy general aviation. It'd be a much different world without our World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Gulf War, and current military. So, um, we need to make sure we call them out. And I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit. One of the other reasons, though, was one of the biggest booms in the experimental home building phase came when these folks came home from World War II. Everybody
Mm.
wanted to fly. Everybody flew. Everybody wanted to continue to fly. You go into the late 40s, early 50s, what was happening? Big boom in general aviation. So that's another reason why we call that out. And I think the third thing is, we inspire young people. To me, having a car museum, you couldn't have a car museum without having 60s muscle. And to me, this is the equivalent of 60s muscle. The military airplanes are always going to be cool. And you need that, though, to inspire young people. When we're young and we're first getting into airplanes, a lot of us build models, right? I still build models. And what do you build models of? P-51s, B-17s. And that sort of allows you that open canvas to get into aviation. And for me, that pathway was, if it didn't have guns on it, it wasn't cool. And then I started, the more models I built and the more I got into airplanes, I can tell you now that one of the first airplanes that caught my eye that was a general aviation airplane was a Staggerwing. And I'm like, wow, what is that? The thing is beautiful. And then from
Yeah.
there, I'm like, whoa, check out that air coupe. And then it just, well, then I was ruined after that. I started really down this rabbit hole of
I
wow, the
really do
Cessna
want to see the
195.
models that you built of the Stagger Wing and the Air Coupe with guns, though.
You voted, yeah, exactly. They didn't have guns, but those are the first airplanes that really allowed me to kind of look at other aircraft of, wow, this is really cool. And then, you started getting into experimental airplanes and looking
Hmm.
at that of like, wow, this is really neat. I'm a sucker for the history and the stories behind it, because I don't think anybody pursues a career in aviation, or you don't go out and build your own airplane without some story there of what motivated you to do that. So,
Uh-huh.
um, but the warbirds were that gateway, and they're a gateway for a lot of young people. So there's a few different reasons why we do that, but
Yeah.
I think it's
Well,
important to
I think
honor them.
it seems to make an awful lot of sense to me, and I'm surprised there would be even any questioning or criticism of it, because the reality is EA seems to be about education, about connection to general aviation, about turning wrenches and getting more involved. It's not it's not about a place where, you know, you're just about dropping off your plane for mechanics. It's about celebrating people who dive into airplanes, whether it's
Exactly.
building a kit, inventing something, or just getting deeply involved in even restoration. And all of these warbirds are restoration projects.
Yes,
And by
absolutely.
nature, I'm pretty sure they all say experimental on the inside to be legal to fly anyway.
That's true too. That's true too. And as we're going to talk about with this, I think these aircraft also allow people heroes. They allow them to study different folks who are truly inspirational and are good role models. And we're going to
Mm,
talk about some of that tonight. And
absolutely.
no
Let's
question. There
dive
you
into
go.
one of those
There's
here.
that's my baby right now. That I'm very proud of that aircraft.
Tell me
That's our
about it.
newest edition. So that's our newest edition. It's a UH-1B Huey. For a long time, um, our Eagle hangar was dedicated only to World War II. But you have to understand that when the Eagle hangar was built, we were right around the 50th anniversary of World War II, so that totally made sense. But the longer down the road we go, we're like, you know, it's great we honor World War II, but we really should be talking about Korea, Vietnam, even go back to some World War One if we can, and then of course going into to the more modern conflicts when we have that ability. And to all of us here, I think, you know, we could easily fill the ramp outside here with Vietnam era planes. I mean, you know, you name an airplane, I name an airplane, the next thing you know, you have a whole fleet. But I think we all, at one point, when we made our dream list of Vietnam era aircraft, what do we get? You know, we wanted to make sure it was inside. We wanted it to have a safe space in the museum proper with a dedicated display around it. Um, I think everybody's list had a Huey on it. I don't think you could talk about Vietnam without talking about the UH-1. So really funny story is we had worked with a group before called Light Horse Legacy, really wonderful people. And that's Dave and Paula Barron and Pat Rogers and others. And we'd worked with them on an exhibit, a temporary exhibit of an aircraft that they had brought here for AirVenture one year. And I said, you know, I don't know where to start with getting a Huey, but I know them and they do a lot of helicopter stuff. We'll call them. So we got a group conference call together. We had a time to call. And we called him and we said, you know, we're just starting this. Where could we even track down one? And, you know, and we knew that it wasn't going to be as easy as just picking up the phone and saying, I need a Huey. Well, it turned out it was literally that. Dave said, well, I'm looking at a combat veteran B model that I own. Would you like it? And we're like, oh my God, are you serious? So, and he and his group did the restoration on it. We have a whole webinar just on the restoration. What I really love about this is there were war veterans from Vietnam who brought their daughters, sons, granddaughters, grandsons out and worked on it together. And there's pictures of them, of grandpa and his granddaughter driving rivets in the old bird that they used to fly. And those are memories in the pictures that you won't be able to recreate like that. You did that with your granddad. Like, how cool is that?
Mm,
Our specific example is a B model gunship. I feel that it's pretty rare. This aircraft was restored exactly how it looked during Vietnam. That nose art is the Viking nose art from the 121st Assault Helicopter Company. We actually, thanks to Pat Rogers, got miniguns and rocket pods mounted on it, just like it would have looked. The battle scars are still there. So it was a restoration and also a conservation. We didn't over restore it. It very much looks a little bit weathered.
mm.
It still has the bullet hole patches in it and things like that all through it. But it flew 4 tours in Vietnam. So it's very much a real artifact. We actually found underneath the floorboards so that's another thing, the floorboards in the aircraft are all scratched up and dinged up. Those are original from Vietnam. When this airplane came home from Vietnam, it was pickled and put in a boneyard. It never flew stateside after Vietnam. It came home on a boat and then was shipped the rest of the way. So the last time this aircraft turned a rotor, it was in Vietnam.
Really?
Yeah,
So
oh
the
yeah. So
restoration the restoration that had been done to it, was it to flying status or was it to museum
no,
status?
it was to museum status for conservation. We could, if somebody came along and said, my God, we have to fly this thing, we could do that, but it would almost be a shame. And here's why. I'm a big fan of, I know it might be a debate. I think there's a proper time and a place for static restoration
Hmm.
versus a flying restoration. And I'll give you a great example of that. Aluminum Overcast, our B-17. That is a great aircraft to select to be a flying restoration. It was produced too late for the war. However, it's still a B-17. It was made of that era. Uh, to me, it's almost made its own history as Aluminum Overcast, touring
Of
the
course.
country,
Yeah.
providing people that opportunity to fly in it.
Right. And we're going
Um,
to talk about that later on.
sure, sure. An airplane that you wouldn't want to do that with is the real Memphis Belle. The real Memphis Belle, yeah, that's the one that you should put down in Dayton. That's the one that you put all the armor plating back in because you don't have to worry about, people trying to squeeze through the airplane and stuff on tour. You can do things with that type of restoration that you can. And this is a prime example of that. When you open up the doors, the access panels in this aircraft, the original Vietnam era wiring is still there.
Mm.
This is all the original wiring that it rolled off the assembly line at Bell to power the weapon systems on the aircraft. So, you would almost lose that because if you decided you wanted to fly the aircraft, you'd have to rewire the whole aircraft.
Right. Right.
So this is a good candidate for doing what it is, and it's a
Makes an
real
awful
combat
lot of
vet.
sense. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And by all means, I love seeing them fly. There's something completely special about that. You have to make sure you keep them flying. That's a very important part. I guess the thing I always like to say is there's room for everybody at the dinner table. Everybody, all these organizations, we all have a different way we preserve history. And sometimes the candidate falls into a slot where it's a good candidate to fly. And then sometimes it's like, yeah, this one we should probably preserve. It's more of a conservation than a restoration.
Right. Right. That makes perfect sense. So, speaking of that, here's another
Uh,
very unique aircraft.
That's another one that's near and dear to my heart. And so we started doing a museum webinar series, and we really outlined the history of our Huey in the first one. I'll let you all in on a little secret. It was very easy because we had just written the exhibit uh, script, so we knew all the history fresh because we just put it in the exhibit. So we're like, this is a good one to do a dry run with, our test run for our webinar series. Um, but what that let us do was connect with all of the veterans who flew this aircraft at one point. And we're like, we should really give that treatment to every aircraft in the museum. Let's go back and find the people who built it, who flew it. Let's go back in the aircraft records and really let's find out, what's really there. I think every museum, every organization struggles with sometimes a well-meaning person who tells a story about an aircraft and sort of catches on, and you're kind of like, I don't know if that's 100% accurate. So our goal was, hey, we'll get our docents in, and we use that as a training moment as well, and let's really get some cool stories about this exact aircraft. What we were really focusing on was the fact that this was the first Corsair to race at Reno, this exact one. It was bought post-war and really raced stock. Luckily, they didn't convert it, but it raced with a very awful paint job. It was like a sort of a turquoise color. It looks like they pulled off of like an old GTO or something, but it doesn't look right on a Corsair. It looks great on a GTO. It doesn't look great on a Corsair. So we were sort of thinking that this is what we would talk about. Let's talk about Reno. And then the aircraft in the 1980s received the paint job that it's wearing now, which honors the Corsair's first ace, Kenneth Walsh. And we come in and our curator, Ben, and I start looking through the records. We have really great records on this aircraft. And we traced it back to Korea. Actually, we traced it back to its first flight in Stratford, Connecticut, the Chance Lot factory. Started working forward. It got pickled. It never really did anything in World War II. Was pickled, brought back out of mothballs for Korea, and we found out it was a replacement airplane for Thomas Hudner's Corsair, which is being focused on in the new movie Devotion that they're filming. Thomas Hudner and Jesse Brown went down during the Korean conflict. They come back, well, Hudner comes back, and this is one of the Corsairs that was assigned to VF-32. They were short 2 aircraft. They only lost 2 aircraft on that whole cruise. So literally our aircraft is a direct replacement for one of the ones lost in that famous mission that's being focused on right now.
So,
Um,
at the risk of kind of a spoiler alert a little
yeah,
bit, tell people the story here of
sure. So, and I really want folks to think about where you feel the United States was with race relations in the 1950s. It wasn't in a great place. And yet half a world away, Jesse Brown, who was the U.S. Navy's first African-American naval aviator, is landing Corsairs on the USS Leyte. He is assigned to VF-32, and when he gets there, his squadron mates viewed him as an equal. They viewed him as their friend. One of them actually bunked with him. Jesse Brown was the only African-American naval aviator at that time, and the guys really treated him really great. I mean, they were best friends, to the point that when Jesse gets shot down, he crash lands. He's trapped in his Corsair. Thomas Hudner ditches his own airplane next to him to try to get out and save him. Again, this is the 1950s, and here's two guys that are fighting, shoulder to shoulder together, and Tom Hudner is out risking his life trying to save his wingman. And unfortunately, Jesse Brown passed away in the process. They think the hypothermia. It was about 15 degrees out. Snow was about waist deep where they crashed. Thomas Hudner was rescued by a rescue helicopter eventually. And when he came back to the United States, he was awarded the Medal of Honor for attempting to rescue his wingman. And the President of the United States put that on him. Next to the President of the United States was Jesse Brown's widow there as well to help award that medal to him. So really an inspirational person, an inspirational story. That is the culmination of the story. However, there's a lot of background info, and the movie, I hope, does a really great job with it. We're excited because we find out these men that are sort of larger than life, about 5 or 6 of them flew our aircraft, including the wing commander, or the squadron commander, and of course Hudner himself. So we have an airplane that a Medal of Honor recipient was flying actively.
That's amazing.
We're excited. We've been in touch with, unfortunately, Tom Hudner passed away a few years ago, but we are in touch with his son, and we're gonna do some cool stuff. Keep watching down the road. We're gonna do some pretty neat stuff with this airplane yet.
That's so cool. I cannot wait to see that in late July. I'm gonna go in there and see that firsthand.
Yeah, it really changes. I'll tell you what, it changes how every day when I walk into my office, I kind of have a view of the Corsair, and it really has changed my view of it. When I look at it a bit differently. So really honored to have this aircraft here with us.
Wow. Now, Chris, you started to say something. I want to make sure we didn't miss anything about something under the floorboards of the Huey before we move on.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry. So when we lifted the floorboards of the Huey, we found spent shell casings from Vietnam all through the belly of the aircraft. So we actually have those on display in a display case next to it. So really incredible. I think one of the things that really gave me chills about the aircraft is when you start talking to the crew. Most of our crew is still with us, and when you go out to the aircraft and they'll say, "Hey, go out to this, this panel, and is there a hole still there, or is there a patch there?" And you'll go out and there's a patch there, and they're like, "Oh, I remember that. That was August. That was, that was this mission to wherever, and that was small arms fire." And you're like, "Holy cow!" And you just kind of, for me, it's a patch, but for them, it's a memory.
Wow. That's pretty impressive to say the least. Okay, so let's move to what always blows me away when I see the museum. I cannot imagine a more extreme yet gorgeous aircraft. You look at, you're like, oh, well, of course, that's the Ferrari of whatever, except it's the Bugatti.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
You could see this from any perspective and say, gorgeous Italian lines. What is this?
It is. It's the Bugatti 100P. This is the only one, the only original one ever built. Ettore Bugatti wanted to build a racing airplane and challenge the big American racers that were hitting some of the speed records. His goal was to challenge those airplanes. And so this is late 1930s. 1938, unfortunately, he started to have to hide his work from Nazi Germany. So he had the aircraft dismantled, hidden on his property, and he never went back to it. And so the war ends successfully. Nobody ever got a hold of the technology, because you look at it, you got to understand 1930s, and you're looking at an airplane that has counter-rotating propellers. It's got retractable landing gear. It's got brakes that a lot of aircraft didn't have at that time, that style. And just look at the design. I mean, that is a pretty revolutionary design for the 1930s. So he didn't want that to fall into the hands of the enemy and help their research anyway. So that's why he had it hidden. And it wouldn't have been found if it wasn't for a car collector. A guy from Michigan went over there to buy Bugatti cars, and he bought a lot of them. And I don't mean a bunch of them. I mean, he bought a lot at an auction of Bugatti cars, and the airplane was in the auction. It was in that lot. And he kind of didn't really know what to do with it, but he brought it home anyway. And he started to put it together, and he kind of displayed it at his place in Michigan. There were some Bugatti diehards that knew what it was, and they were really urging him that you really should donate that to a museum. So he donated it to the Air Force Museum in Dayton. And, you know, kudos to the Air Force Museum, they preserved it. But at the same token, it doesn't really fit their mission because it's not an Air Force airplane. They working with a doctor who was a big Bugatti collector, approached EA and said, would you like to have the aircraft? And they donated it to us. So we completed its restoration here. It's a work of art, in my opinion. I'll give you an example why I say that. So the screw heads on the top of the screws in the aircraft have the Bugatti emblem on them, each one. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, like that's incredible. I mean, the blue was a signature blue paint, you know, that only Bugatti blended that style, and it's very. You actually hit the nail on the head. It's like a Ferrari, and it's one of one.
Except it's better because it's a Bugatti.
It's a Bugatti, and it's one of one. Yeah, I gotta be careful saying that. My Italian heritage, my ancestors might come after me if I say that, but yeah, it's just an amazing airplane, and it's truly amazing that it survives.
Yeah.
I mean, it survived being hidden, you know, during wartime, and then somehow, you know, skipped by to get into a private collection and then to an Air Force museum to here. So we're really proud to have this airplane. To me, it's one of the crown jewels of the collection.
Yeah, and for both myself and everybody listening, you get to the museum, that's the new Easter egg about all this is look for the screws with the Bugatti
Yeah, yeah.
stamp on them.
If you're here and you're listening and you come visit the museum, my office is right by the entrance to the Eagle hangar. Come say hello, and I'll be happy to walk out there with you.
That's fantastic. How cool is that? Okay, so next I want to talk about something. Now, right behind me here is our own Mustang that we're building, and obviously in a house, which is weird enough. But when I go to the museum, what catches my eye is the fact that you've got skis on a P-51 Mustang.
We do. So we have a set of skis for the P-51. These are P-51 skis. So you actually have the data plate even on them. And what we found out is we had them displayed with the XP-51. We have the oldest surviving Mustang in the world. It's actually the fourth one ever built. Its designation is XP-51. And originally, some of the story, again, that research that I love to do brings a light sometimes out on things. And sometimes it makes displaying items easier, and sometimes it makes it harder. This is one that made it harder because we had always been told that it was actually experimented with on the XP-51. What we found out was these skis were actually for a P-51B or a C, I can't remember which. So we still have them displayed. We do display the XP-51 a little bit differently now. But yeah, these skis were an experiment to fly the Mustang on skis, which I don't know how that would go. I don't know how that landing would go. You have to have a lot of runway.
I thought, see, that's interesting because I thought, and again, it goes with like, hey, you get great stories at museums, but only folks like yourself actually do the homework to find out what the truth is. And so I remember seeing this, someone was like, well, that's how they used to get them over there. They had to use skis landing in Iceland on the way over. That was the story I got.
Yeah, the story that I know through some research that we've done is it was an experiment. And they did fly some like this, but it was not commonplace. So no, you didn't see it very much.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Like that's got to be an interesting thing. Let alone the fact that you've got to be flying Mustang gear down the whole time. And
Right, yeah, there's no way to
yeah,
retract or anything with that. I mean, just I always told people I want to throw these on a Mustang and then like push it out for the ski plane fly-in
yeah.
and just let people try to figure out. I think that'd be fantastic.
Let everyone, and then they just you might even start it up just to get everyone freaking out and
Yeah, have somebody go
wanting,
out and lean
wanting you
on
to
it, like,
repeat
yeah, I
it.
brought this in, and
Oh, that is so cool. Wow. So another kind of personal story here that directly connects to the EA Museum, and I'll tell you this puts a huge grin on my face. I went our last year when travel was all possible and we were able to go. We did a trip all the way across the pretty much all the way across the country. Went out to Glacier National Park with the boys. Did this big adventure. As part of that, we stopped in Duluth. And we did that at the Sky Harbor Airport, which is just gorgeous, amazing place. Some of the friendliest, most wonderful people we'd ever bumped into. And we were approached while we were there by Mark and Sandra Marino. And they were like, oh, not only did they help us out with everything we needed at the airport, but they took us into their hangar, which you can see here in the background. And they gave us a tour of what they were doing. And one of the things that they did there was they gave us this whole background on this gorgeous restoration they did on the aircraft, the Lark of Duluth. And this was basically one of the first airline aircraft, even though airline aircraft was, two, pilot
yeah,
and passenger, and that was it. And and as we got to talking about this, Mark was asking me about how he could connect with EAA for donating this labor of love that he and his wife had done. And this project is so many years. It was, oh my God, the most amazing restoration. Every single piece, flying wires, turnbuckles, they made everything themselves for this. And it's such a unique aircraft, and it did fly the replica they built. And I put him in touch with Jack Pelton, and we were able to get the aircraft transitioned, and now here it is
yeah.
in your
There it is in the
museum.
museum. Yeah, yeah, and we so when I heard it was coming, um, so it's really funny because somebody when they first told me it was coming, they said, "Oh, we're going to get an airliner," and
Make a
I'm
little
like,
room.
"Oh." Yeah, and they're like, we're gonna hang it, and I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, because in my head, I'm like, you talking about like a 737 or something, or and then they started talking about the Lark of Duluth, so I started reading about it, and I'm like, okay, this looks really cool. I have to admit, I did not know much about it at that point. Um, Started reading up on it, and then I saw it when it came here, and it's the first words that come out of my mouth, that I think to use to describe it is drool worthy. I mean, the airplane is just beautiful, and the absolute craftsmanship that was done to build this airplane. And that's one of the reasons why we actually have it displayed suspended by the balcony, so that you
Mm.
can actually get a look inside. If you go around the one view of the balcony, you can actually look in the cockpit a little bit. Um, and we just had to show that off somehow because it's gorgeous. And as far as I know, they didn't have drawings they were working from. They were
No,
using photos, and they were using I mean, just anything they could scour for materials, and yet they built this absolutely beautiful aircraft.
it's
And
having been through this close up in detail and around it's amazing. And some of the and then the stories, of course, apparently it is really not an easy plane to fly and does not have good flying qualities. Like he's basically said the original crashed like twice.
right,
The
yeah,
it wasn't the design that was really ready for prime time to be the first airliner, but
yeah,
yeah,
well,
it was the first airliner.
well, and what's funny is somebody asked me once, and then it dawned on me talking to the curators. We kind of compare notes with each other, and I'm like, yeah, it's interesting. He built a seaplane, and it's like, well, because there weren't any airports, and I'm like, oh yeah, there weren't, up in Duluth, especially up in Duluth, like you just land on the water wherever you want because there weren't that many airports or
Yeah.
places to land, so
As long as you're comfortable, as I found out in this, that your feet left and right are working the ailerons,
Yeah,
the lever in front of you left, it's like nothing made any sense. And
nothing is a standard.
unfortunately, the first flight they did, they actually crashed also during the first flight and had to go and repair it. Like it's a tough plane, but the restoration is perfect, and it
It
is
is.
absolutely breathtaking. Every little, like you said, screw, flying wire. I remember he showed
Yeah.
me the wrapping that they did of what they didn't have this turnbuckles. They had to make them all and use safety wire for everything instead of turnbuckle. And they actually load tested it and stress tested it, and it went way beyond the AN hardware in terms of strength.
Wow.
Crazy
That,
stuff.
yeah. I love they had to build a special cradle to move this thing around on the ground. And they
Yes.
donated that as well. And I always tell everybody I want to use that as like it looks like this medieval sort of catapult thing that they they used, you know. But yeah, it is absolutely gorgeous. And it's a really important airplane. We don't have a lot of aircraft to tell the story of early aviation around that era. So it
Ooh.
really fit kind of a hole in the collection that you know that we had here. So we're really proud to have it here on display.
Yeah, and I also like that, as you mentioned, you've got experimental aviation well represented. You have some military represented. You have record holders and things like that are in there. This is literally the growth of passenger travel, and
Yeah.
that's an interesting aspect.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, especially United States, where we were certainly not leading the charge at some points in history for commercial aviation. I mean, other countries were having successful airline routes before we were getting off the ground.
Mm,
So for us to be able to tell the story of, this is a little bit of the birthplace of the United States, passenger services aircraft like this. It's not, and that's what I loved most about it is it's not what you think of. I mean, when people hear birth of passenger airline service, they think of like a DC-3,
mm.
and it's like, no, it goes back further than that. You have to go back to these pioneers to learn more about it. And again, to me, one of the telling signs is look at it, it's a seaplane because there wasn't a lot of landing facilities even available for these guys, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the other thing I think that's also fascinating is it also draws attention to different parts of the country than people think of when they think of the birth of aviation.
Yeah,
It's
you
so
think of
easy
New
to think of
York, you
like
think of
Kitty Hawk or
California.
something, but
Yeah,
that isn't
exactly.
really where it came from. Like this was Duluth,
Right,
and
right. Something completely different. Yeah, you think of, well, like you said, you think of the Wright brothers from Dayton going out to Kitty Hawk, and then you think of stuff that happened in like New York or something, and suddenly it's like, hey, there was a lot of interesting stuff going on in other parts of the country, and
right.
and here's a great example of it.
Yeah, and
And Duluth
especially in the
isn't that
middle of the
far.
country, yeah, like this, where it was so important to come up
Yeah,
with means of air travel for longer distances.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
So we started to talk about another one that's super close to my heart, and that is aluminum overcast.
Oh yes, yes. How
So
much time do we have?
another personal connection thing here. We were obviously, I'm a mechanic. One of my two sons is studying right now, and in a couple of weeks might be able to get through his exam. And so we love working on airplanes. We had a very unique opportunity to come out and actually turn wrenches on the plane. Get in there. This is
Awesome.
Ben getting the switch to actually run controls in the cockpit. These are, we weren't just we turned around for the camera, but the reality is we were able to turn pumps on and help them as they were doing stuff down there, and then go down and actually swing wrenches and get, as you see, into the cowls to do work on it. It's just such an amazing plane, and I would encourage everyone, if you have any opportunity, this is Jake fueling it, you have any opportunity to get a flight on one of these aircraft, especially aluminum overcast, do it. Do whatever you have to do it. It is so amazing, and I actually have flown on it. It is fantastic. And so tell me the story, and then tell me about your book, The Final Mission.
Absolutely. So we're very, I keep saying honored, but it's the best thing I could think to say, to have this B-17 in our collection here. And it's a B-17, again, as I mentioned before, that goes out and flies towards the country. Aluminum overcast, she was built too late for the war. It was, a lot of folks don't realize, and I kind of like that it is one of these. When you think of the B-17, you think of Boeing. A lot of folks don't realize that under the War Act, Boeing was asked to allow other other contractors to build B-17s. Lockheed Vega, who built ours out in Burbank, California, and then Douglas Vega also built B-17s. Kind of a funny story. At the moment, all the B-17s that are flying none of them are Boeing built, which is kind of an odd fact. They're all either Lockheed or Douglas Vega, or Lockheed Vega or Douglas. I'm sorry. Yeah, so our B-17 was built at the end of the war. It was an airplane that was flagged to be a boneyard airplane. It was pulled from the boneyard by the Stoltzfus family. They got it. They were going to convert it to an air sprayer, like for agriculture uses. They never did that. They sold it. Eventually, it was converted to a fire ant sprayer. They put these big spray bars out in the wings. And really interesting, I don't know much about spraying fire ants. I will break that to you all now. But when you think of B-17s that survive, a lot of them were fire bombers. A lot of them were dumping, that orange stuff on forest fires. A lot of it was borate. That was extremely corrosive to the aluminum. So a gentleman named Dr. Bill Harrison came along, wanted to buy B-17. A friend of his said, I know where there is one. It was down in Alabama in Dothan. And he said, but I think it's all corroded out because it's been an air sprayer. And Dr. Harrison said, well, I'll go down and take a look. So it was actually him and a few friends that were all going to pull in and together and buy this. And he went down to take a look, and here they started opening up panels. And what they discovered was the chemicals used to spray fire ants was actually containing a corn-based material, and it preserved the aluminum. So the airplane was completely opposite of a corrosion bucket. The thing was like brand new. So he bought the airplane because everybody thought it was corroded, and here there wasn't any corrosion in it, and flew it back to, I believe, Florida, had the work done on it, pulled the spray bars, and got it to look a bit more like a B-17, and then started touring it to air shows, and eventually donated it to EAA. We took it from there and really started working to get the gun turrets, the weapon systems, the equipment that a World War II B-17 would have. It's kind of like tinkering with an old car or anything else. You're always looking for parts to make it a bit more authentic. And then we started to tour it across the country. The great thing about having a museum is school groups can come to you. The cool thing about having a B-17 is a lot of school groups can't come to you, so you can bring this flying classroom to them. And it truly is. The folks who fought and won World War II, they came from small towns, and a lot of times, and we're able to take this B-17 back to those small towns. And that was one of the things that I did with this airplane, was I would help work on the media flights. And so every time the plane was going somewhere, I would reach out to VFWs, local air museums, even assisted living facilities, and just ask, do you have a World War II veteran? Do you have a B-17 World War II veteran even? And a lot of times we were kicking up results of, yeah, there are some of them still here with us. Grandpa would love to come out and see the airplane. We would do better than that. We'd get him a ride. We would take him flying. And I know if you've spent any time near warbirds, you've heard this before. There's something about, there's almost a little bit of like a fountain of youth, sort of enigma around the airplane, where Grandpa comes out on a cane, and after a few minutes around the B-17, suddenly the cane's leaning against the tire, and he's kind of out crawling through the airplane or something, And what was happening was these stories were pouring out of them. Not just warbirds, but if you spend any time around any airplane, especially vintage aircraft of any level, there's stories that go with them. The prior people who flew them, for military planes, the guys who took them into combat. And everybody has these stories. And we were all sitting here and we're like, we really should be recording not just who's coming on board, but their stories. And when we started talking to these veterans, they started saying, well, how about if I bring my photo albums out? And they were bringing these never before seen, unpublished, raw photos from their World War II experience. They're very personal. And, a lot of these people said, Grandpa's never told us this story. First time, I've ever heard Dad talk about this. One of my favorite stories is there was a family who had a grandmother who was a Rosie the Riveter who built these.
Oh,
And
wow.
they called her to see if she was interested in coming out to see it. She wasn't home at the time. And they said, well, maybe we'll go check it out, see if it's suitable for grandma, and then we'll go get her later. Well, the reason she wasn't home is she didn't wait. She had heard this was coming, and she drove herself out to the airport, shows up, we find out, we're talking with her, we have a flight going and we have an empty seat, so we put her in the airplane and we took her flying. She had built thousands of B-17s, but she had never flown in one. So we changed that, and she got to fly in an airplane that she helped build finally. And the funniest part of this is we land, and afterwards we shut down, and we're like, "Can we get some photos of you leaning out of the pilot's window?" And she said, "Sure." And as she's doing this, and we're taking pictures, and she's kind of waving, she starts waving at her grandkids who had just showed up, and they see like grandma just pull up in this B-17 and start, leaning out the window waving at everybody. So they were just like, "Grandma," like, so that's the kind of stuff that I really love. I have a cliched saying, I'm sure, and I always tell people, talk to your grandparents, because while you have them, I guarantee you, your grandparents are way cooler than you'll ever experience. And it's something I found out. My grandparents fought, they were in Italy fighting Nazis during World War II. So I always tell everybody, no matter what, go talk to your parents and your grandparents and find out the most you can about your family history. And I feel this airplane is sort of a spark plug for getting people to do that, and getting a chance to come out, climb through it, sit where grandpa sat, and maybe get a little taste of just what that was like. A little taste. It's still a lot friendlier skies than flying over the United Kingdom in World War II, but you at least experience the smell, the sound, the feel, get you a little experience of maybe some of your family history or American history.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll say it again too, because I know if whether you see the B-17 aluminum overcast at Oshkosh at AirVenture, or maybe it comes to a town near you, or something like that where you can go see it during its tour. It it costs a lot of money for a ticket because it costs a lot to keep these things going, and but at the same time, having done that, I would say I can't imagine money better spent. I mean, you get a personal tour when you do this. You get an opportunity to go in it and not just fly in it, but see all the different aspects of it, try out the different seats, see what it's like, and it's not just buckle up, go around, and you don't get to do it. It's a part of getting to see the aircraft you don't get otherwise. And it's really interesting to do that, and see all the different aspects of it. About the only thing
I
you probably
agree.
don't get to, which I've tried squeezing myself into a ball turret once. That's probably not right. I will say,
I'm
we got
not
the
going to get
door
involved
closed.
in it either. So
I
yeah,
did get into it, and that was
yeah.
enough for me to say, "Oh my God, I can't believe another human being did this while being shot at."
The thing that I always tell people, especially if you have any interest in this, um, there are books out there that cost $100 on the subject. There are models that cost $300. You get to go out and fly and experience it for four. And I guarantee you it's going to be more valuable than, I'm a model builder, but it's going to be more experience than the model or the book. And I'll give you a great example of that. First off, my first flight in the B-17 was Fuddy Duddy.
Hmm.
And then eventually I got to fly in Overcast when I came to work here, and I've gotten to do that a few times, which is, there's just like coming here to work. Every time you do it, it's special. And one of the first things that really hit me was, this airplane is not airtight. You can see daylight
No.
through parts. There's air blowing through this thing. And then you start thinking about, I'm going up to 3,000, 4,000 feet today. These guys were going up to like high 20s into the 30s, and but it's open. There's air blowing through it. When you step down into that ball turret in flight and you look around the ring of that turret, you can see daylight and you can see swimming pools and stuff going by. That is a brave first step down into that ball turret. Again, I didn't do it, but we had the hatch open and we can look down in there. You go over the Bombay, that's not airtight. And you sit up in that nose, and that the first thing that hit me was, God, could you imagine sitting up in this big clear nose, beautiful view. However, could you imagine being up here when there's German fighters coming in at you, or
Yeah.
there's flak or anti-aircraft fire coming up?
Oh my
That just had
God.
to be a horrific place to be. And then, the other thing that I think is truly educational about it is, and I think sometimes movies and even video games get a bad rap because at least they're a gateway into studying it. When you play some of the old Medal of Honor games or Call of Duty or some of the different movies like Midway, I get it. Sometimes they really kind of drop the ball on some stuff, but at least you're spoon feeding some history. You at least got somebody to look around.
Hmm.
And I went and saw the new movie Midway when it was out in the theater, and I remember there were two kids in front of me that were in high school. And when the movie ended, and the movie got mixed reviews, and there's some reasons for that. But when the movie ended, I'll never forget on the way out, me and my uncle were behind them, and they were talking about McCluskey and Dick Best. And it's like, you know what? There's two kids that maybe would have never heard about these guys flying SBDs, and now they're Googling them. So now they've furthered their reach for knowledge. And the B-17 is the same way. I had a young guy come out, just go on a ground tour with me. He was like high school age. It was him and a couple buddies. And they're like, oh yeah, we've done some stuff in one of the video games and stuff. But then they were knocking on aluminum overcast, and they're like, so where's the armor plating? And we're like, yeah, there's very little armor plating on a B-17, and they're like, oh my God, it's just in aluminum. And I'm like, that's what these guys flew to war in. This was what they were doing. And you know what? They were doing it at about your age. You're talking about people just out of high school, and they were flying in 1,000 plane raids over Germany. They're, like I said, your grandparents, everybody's grandparents are probably way cooler than we ever give them credit for.
So Chris, tell me about the book.
Absolutely. So the final mission was the so I'll just tell you how it happened. Basically, Jack called a meeting where myself and Jim Busha and Hal Bryan got together, and Jack said, write a book. So we're like, okay, and Jim was like, well, I guess we got to make a book. And it was truly special to get to do this because I did it with people who are my friends. These are an extended family here. And we sat down and we poured over all of the stories, all of the photos that we've collected over the years. And I'm thankful for every person of this team. Just like a B-17, this book, it was a team effort. We take one of these people out of the equation and it doesn't work. And it was really neat because we would see other staffers like myself and Hal and Jim, we're really hardcore into this. But some of our other staffers, they have other interests or other areas of aviation they're into. But it was really neat when you would see like Brandon Jacobs, who was one of the graphic designers who did beautiful work on the book. I went up to meet with him one day in his office, and he's got like a 1943 B-17 maintenance manual sitting on his desk, and it's something because he's working on something for the book, and that was just kind of a geek out moment where you had these people who were in their 20s and 30s with these original World War II artifacts, and they're using them. They're looking through that for educational things. It was kind of a proud moment for that. But I'm really thankful for Hal Bryan doing this with me. There's no way this would have worked without Hal. Hal he's a wealth of knowledge and a really skilled author as well. So
So the book is available from EAA.
yeah, it's 20. It's I think it's I won't quote a price because I can't remember what it's on there for. But if you just Google, go Google EAA, the final mission book, this pops up. What's really neat about it is it's the pictures and the stories. Most of them have never been published before. For example, we go through just a little bit of history about the B-17 overall, and there was a gentleman named John Englund out in Seattle who said, hey, I was helping tear down the Seattle plant, and I found these original like 1930s pictures of early B-17s, and they were in the trash, and Boeing said I can have them. Do you want to use them in your book? And we did. So those pictures are in there. I mean, they were original Boeing photos that they let us use. So really, really special to be part of it. A lot of personal stories, and I hope if you get it, you enjoy it. I'm really proud of it.
That's awesome, and I'd recommend everybody go get it. If you're going to be at AirVenture, get it. I'm going to make sure that I get a copy brought over for you to sign. I'd
be happy to do it.
One.
I would be happy to do it. And I do want to point out that all the proceeds for the book go to the B-17. None of us felt that that would be right. We think that the proceeds should go to this ultimate memorial for these guys to keep it flying.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Well, Chris, I just want to thank you so much for joining us tonight on
Yeah,
Social Flight Live and giving us such a...
that went so fast. What the heck?
Ah, we have to do another one with other stories on other planes.
I know. I was like, man, how are we gonna talk for an hour? That was too fast.
Highest compliment I can receive.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's truly a pleasure.
I really appreciate it. And to everyone out there, again, thank you for spending your evening also with us. And be sure to find a time in your life to get out there to EAA's museum. You may even be able to track Chris down out there. And I'll tell you, I've never met anyone who's a better narrator of the story of all of those aircraft than Chris is. And so I really do appreciate everything that you do for aviation and for, of course, for EAA, and to all of you again for joining us. And I'd also like to make sure that everybody knows next week we are off for Sun and Fun, but that doesn't mean that you're completely without us, because what we are actually going to do is I will be videoing live walk around from the show and then posting it. Again, go to our YouTube channel, just search for Social Flight, one word on YouTube, and you'll get to see exactly what it's like to be at this year's Sun and Fun as aviation comes roaring back. A little trial run before we get out there to Air Venture. So be sure to join us for that. We're coming back on the Tuesday, April 20th. It's 2 weeks from tonight with a very special maintenance night. We are going to talk about owner maintenance and teach you all sorts of fun stuff. Take your questions, have fun with that, and building up to this crazy peak of a show on Tuesday, April 27th, which will be with Neil Hansen, who is the guy from Air America and also American Made. So if you have seen the movies here way back, Air America, Mel Gibson, Danny Glover flying over in Laos and for the CIA, and then also Tom Cruise flying with American Made and flying, doing work with the drug cartels for the CIA. This is the guy, and his stories, I don't know how we're going to fit into an hour.
You're gonna need a couple episodes with Neil. I've spent time with you. You're gonna need more time.
Exactly. So Chris, again, thank you so much for your time and everything that you do.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And if you come out to the museum, come look me up. You can't miss me. I'm right at the entrance to the Eagle Hangar. Come and say hi.
Excellent. All right, everyone. I wish you all blue skies. Good night.